According to the official police dispatch logs, a text message originated from the personal cell phone of Nancy Guthrie at exactly 4 in the afternoon on a quiet Tuesday. The digital record shows the message was successfully transmitted and received, painting a picture of a woman going about her normal afternoon routine without any hint of distress. Yet, 50 miles away from her home, a security camera mounted high above an interstate toll booth captured a very different reality. At exactly 2 in the afternoon, the camera recorded a silver sedan passing through the automated payment lane. The license plate, captured by the high-speed lens, was confirmed to be the vehicle registered to Nancy. The grainy black and white footage showed the silhouette of a driver gripping the steering wheel, but the sun visor was intentionally pulled all the way down and the face of the person operating the vehicle was entirely obscured in deep, impenetrable shadow. These two separate pieces of confirmed evidence sit at the absolute center of a profound and disturbing investigative contradiction. We have a physical sighting of her vehicle heading away from the city limits at 2 in the afternoon and a digital footprint of her phone sending a casual message 2 hours later. When you place these two official timelines side by side, the foundational logic of the case shatters completely. One of these timestamps is a meticulously crafted lie designed to misdirect the authorities and manipulate the entire narrative of a sudden disappearance. The question that has haunted the lead detectives and forensic data analysts from the very beginning is deceptively simple, yet completely terrifying. Who is lying in this scenario? The human being hidden behind the wheel of that car, or the machine transmitting the cellular signal across the network? Someone deliberately orchestrated a phantom trail to buy themselves time. If you want to understand how a person can vanish into thin air while leaving a perfectly manufactured trail of digital breadcrumbs behind them, you need to look closer at the raw data. To dissect the official timeline and decode the forensic evidence in this case and others like it, subscribe to Tracking Evil with John right now so we can untangle this complex web of digital deception together. The official timeline has missing pieces, and someone out there holds the fragment. If you spotted the gaps I just showed you, subscribe and let us dissect the next case together. Before the toll booth footage and the mysterious text message complicated the investigation, the daily life of Nancy was defined by an absolute obsession with digital discipline. According to sworn testimony from a close coworker, Nancy lived her life by a rigid electronic schedule where every single email, phone call, and personal appointment was meticulously logged into a synchronized calendar system. She was known to reply to work communications within minutes, and her digital presence was a constant, reliable force in the lives of everyone who knew her. This intense level of organization makes the events of the morning she vanished incredibly disturbing. Hours before she was officially reported missing, a significant and highly unusual digital anomaly occurred. At exactly 8 in the morning, the read receipts on her primary messaging application were manually disabled. This might seem like a trivial detail to a casual observer, but in the context of forensic profiling it is a massive red flag. Nancy had never once disabled this feature in the 5 years she owned the device. The sudden deactivation of the read receipts effectively severed her digital transparency. This specific confirmed detail completely destroys the theory of a voluntary disappearance. A person planning to run away and start a new life does not typically pause to adjust the privacy settings. On a messaging application they are about to abandon, the deactivation suggests one of two chilling possibilities. Either Nancy was actively trying to hide her whereabouts from a specific person attempting to contact her that morning, or someone else entirely had already gained physical control of her mobile device. The forensic implications are staggering when you consider the timeline. The digital footprint of Nancy Guthrie had already begun to be systematically erased from the inside out many hours before the outside world even realized she was no longer there. Her virtual identity was being manipulated while her physical location remained entirely unknown, the coworker reported, feeling a strange sense of unease when their morning messages went unread and the little delivery indicators remained blank. That small blank space on a screen was the first silent alarm that something had gone terribly wrong. The precision required to alter those specific settings indicates a calculated mind at work. It shows an understanding of how digital tracking operates and a deliberate effort to blind those who might come looking for her. The perpetrator, or perhaps Nancy herself, under extreme duress, knew that in the modern world, silence is often louder than a scream. The absence of data became the most crucial piece of data the investigators had. The tension leading up to her disappearance was not marked by loud arguments or sudden financial ruin, but by the quiet, methodical dismantling of her daily digital habits. The unease settles in when you realize that the first phase of this suspected crime did not involve a weapon or a physical struggle, but simply the tapping of a glass screen in a quiet room, altering the flow of information to the outside world. This silent manipulation creates a deeply unsettling atmosphere because it happens invisibly. We rely on these digital tethers to ensure the safety of our loved ones. When that flow is intentionally cut off, it leaves a terrifying void. The meticulous nature of her usual routine makes this sudden darkness feel incredibly heavy and deliberate. It is a slow burn of anxiety that builds with every unanswered text and every unlogged hour on her meticulously kept calendar. The realization that someone can simply switch off their visibility and vanish into the margins of the day is deeply disturbing. The digital discipline that once defined her life had been completely weaponized to conceal her ultimate fate from the authorities. The silent digital alarms ringing in the morning culminated in a physical absence by the evening. The activating event that finally mobilized the authorities occurred when Nancy failed to arrive for a scheduled family dinner at 6 in the evening. Her family members reportedly called her phone repeatedly, but every single call went straight to a generic, automated voicemail. After 3 hours of mounting panic, the family requested a formal wellness check. 2 uniformed officers arrived at the suburban residence of Nancy at exactly 9 that night. The initial dispatch log details a scene that was both completely ordinary and deeply sinister. The exterior of the home showed no signs of forced entry. The windows were intact and the perimeter lighting was functioning normally. The officers approached the front door and found it firmly locked from the inside, engaging the heavy deadbolt. After gaining entry through a side window with the permission of the family, the officers stepped into a silent, untouched house. The air was stale, indicating the doors had not been opened all day long. In the kitchen, the officers found the purse belonging to Nancy, sitting precisely in the center of the granite island counter. Right next to the purse lay her house keys. However, the detached garage was completely empty, and her silver sedan was missing. The contradiction was immediate and baffling. How could she lock the deadbolt from the inside, leave her keys on the kitchen counter, and then drive away in her vehicle? The physical evidence strongly suggested she never left the house under her own power. As the officers moved through the residence, conducting a systematic search of every room, the tension escalated. The house was immaculately clean with no signs of a struggle, no overturned furniture, and no obvious forensic evidence of a violent crime. It was a pristine environment that offered absolutely no answers. Then the profound silence of the empty house was suddenly broken by a faint, muffled sound. An electronic ringing tone was vibrating somewhere deep within the master bedroom. The officers followed the sound to a large walk-in closet. Hidden beneath a pile of heavy winter coats at the very bottom of a laundry basket, they discovered a secondary prepaid cell phone. The screen was illuminated in the darkness of the closet, showing an incoming call. The caller identification simply read, "Unknown." The officers let the phone ring, noting the exact time in their report. The discovery of this hidden device completely altered the trajectory of the initial investigation. Why would a woman so dedicated to digital organization possess an unregistered prepaid phone and hide it so thoroughly beneath layers of clothing? The ringing phone suggested an ongoing active situation. Someone was trying to reach that specific device at that exact moment, knowing it was hidden in that closet. The officers documented the ringing phone, taking photographs of its location, before carefully securing it as critical evidence. The incident had shifted from a standard missing person case to a highly complex puzzle involving locked doors, missing vehicles, and hidden communication devices. The fact that the house was locked from the inside while the resident and her car were gone created a closed room mystery that defied immediate logical explanation. The answering machine in the living room sat blinking with 0 new messages, while the hidden phone in the closet continued its set, relentless ringing. The sheer volume of unanswered questions in those first few hours threatened to overwhelm the local authorities. Every piece of physical evidence they found seemed to directly contradict the piece of evidence they had found before it. The empty garage argued she had driven away, but the keys on the counter argued she was still inside. The locked deadbolt suggested she was securing herself from a threat, but the hidden phone suggested she was engaged in secretive communications. The officers, standing in that dimly lit bedroom, realized they were not just looking for a missing woman, but they were stepping into a labyrinth of intentional misdirection. The labyrinth deepened dramatically when the federal authorities became involved and executed a comprehensive cell tower dump to track the movements of her primary, mobile device. The forensic cellular analysis provided by the Federal Bureau of Investigation delivered the most shocking revelation of the entire case thus far. The investigators needed to reconcile the toll booth footage from 2 in the afternoon with the text message sent at 4 in the afternoon. They requested the historical location data for her primary phone, expecting it to follow the path of the silver sedan down the interstate highway. Instead, the data packets revealed a geographic impossibility. The official report confirmed that at exactly 2 in the afternoon, the precise moment the security camera captured her vehicle passing through the toll booth 50 miles away, the primary cell phone belonging to Nancy pinged a local cell tower located less than half a mile from her residence. The physical car and the digital device were in 2 completely different locations simultaneously. The vehicle went one way, while the cellular signal remained stationary near the house. This was the moment the official timeline completely fractured. It proved beyond any shadow of a doubt that a deliberate, highly sophisticated deception was underway. The person driving the silver sedan through the toll booth could not possibly be the person holding the cell phone. The perpetrator had intentionally separated the physical scene of the vehicle from the digital scene of the device to manufacture a complex alibi and confuse the search grid. By keeping the phone near the house, they ensured that any initial location pings would suggest she was still at home, while the vehicle was used to transport something or someone far away from the local jurisdiction. This revelation introduces a terrifying level of premeditation. The individual responsible understood exactly how law enforcement uses cellular data to track movement, and they actively weaponized that knowledge against the investigation. They knew the toll booth cameras would capture the car, and they knew the cell tower would capture the phone, creating a set of contradictory facts that would stall the detectives for days. The sheer brazenness of driving the vehicle of the victim past a federal camera while simultaneously leaving her digital footprint behind requires a cold and clinical calculation. The authorities were now looking at 2 distinct crime scenes separated by 50 miles of highway. The digital forensics experts stared at the data mapping software, unable to comprehend how perfectly the suspect had split the timeline. The car was traveling southbound at 60 miles per hour, while the phone remained dormant, connecting to the local tower every 15 minutes like clockwork. The implications are deeply chilling, because it means the suspect had physical access to both the car and the phone, and made a conscious, tactical decision to separate them. The physical evidence and the digital evidence were now at war with each other. The entire foundation of the search effort was built on shifting sand. If the phone was near the house, who was sending the text message at 4 in the afternoon? If the car was on the highway, who was sitting in the driver's seat hidden by the sun visor? This contradiction is the core anomaly of the Guthrie case. It is the moment the investigators realized they were hunting a ghost who knew how to manipulate the electronic grid. The suspect had effectively created Percent, a digital clone of the victim, leaving it behind to broadcast a false sense of security, while the physical reality of the crime unfolded miles away. The deliberate severing of the physical and digital timelines is a masterclass in forensic countermeasure. I want to know what you think about this tactical maneuver, so drop your theory in the comments below about who was holding the primary phone while the car was driven away, and let us dissect the psychology of this digital deception together. The investigative team was forced to split their resources, dispatching units to the toll plaza while simultaneously organizing a grid search around the local cell tower. Faced with a fractured timeline, the tenants pied investigative team shifted their focus to the granular details of the morning, reconstructing every single minute using witness statements, global positioning, system data, and credit card transaction logs. They needed an anchor point, a piece of evidence that could ground the timeline in absolute reality. The breakthrough seemed to arrive when they interviewed a local barista who served as the primary witness for the morning hours. The witness provided a sworn statement confirming they saw Nancy at a downtown coffee shop. The witness confidently placed the sighting at exactly 1:30 in the afternoon, stating they remembered the time because their shift was ending. This testimony initially provided a massive relief to the detectives because it offered a physical sighting of the victim just 30 minutes before. The car was seen at the toll booth, It seemed to repair the timeline, suggesting she simply left the coffee shop and drove straight to the highway. However, the relentless nature of forensic research demands that every human memory be cross-verified with immutable data. The detectives subpoenaed the internal transaction logs and the security camera footage from the coffee shop to corroborate the witness statement. When the digital records arrived, the entire narrative unraveled once again. The credit card belonging to Nancy was, indeed, swiped at the register, but the transaction timestamp read 12:30 in the afternoon, not 1:30. The police then reviewed the security camera footage, which clearly showed Nancy ordering her drink, but the digital clock embedded in the corner of the video file also read 12:30. The detectives immediately confronted the witness with the discrepancy, suspecting a deliberate lie or a cover-up. The witness remained adamant about the time, insisting their memory was flawless. The tension in the interrogation room reached a boiling point before a forensic technician noticed a mundane technical detail that blew the case wide open. The technician examined the raw metadata of the security camera system and discovered a catastrophic administrative error. The internal clock of the coffee shop security system had never been updated to reflect daylight saving time. It was exactly 1 hour behind the actual physical time. The witness was completely truthful, and their memory was accurate. Nancy was indeed at the coffee shop at 1:30. The credit card terminal, which was connected to a central banking server, was also accurate, reflecting the correct time of 1:30. The security camera alone was operating in a false timeline. This single-hour discrepancy completely destroyed the working theory of the case. The detectives realized that if the camera was off by an hour, then every other piece of unverified time-stamped evidence needed to be completely reevaluated. They initiated a massive audit of all digital records surrounding the case. The revised police timeline revealed a shocking truth. The critical window of opportunity, the missing hours where the crime actually occurred, was not in the afternoon as everyone had assumed. The forensic audit proved that the afternoon movements were entirely staged. The true time of the disappearance, the actual missing window, occurred between 3 and 6 in the dark early morning hours of that Tuesday. The police had been intensely investigating the afternoon timeline for 3 agonizing weeks, interviewing witnesses and chasing leads based on a completely false premise. The realization that they had been looking at the wrong time of day was a devastating blow to the momentum of the investigation. All the alibis provided by various persons of interest for the afternoon were suddenly rendered completely worthless. The suspect had not committed the crime in the light of day, but in the dead of night, using the daylight saving time error and the staged afternoon digital footprint to construct an impenetrable shield of misdirection. The detectives had to go back to square one, discarding thousands of pages of reports and starting the entire timeline analysis over from the beginning. They had to look into the darkness of 3 in the morning a time, when there are no witnesses, no coffee shop cameras, and no easy answers. The sheer exhaustion of the investigative team was palpable as they realized the scale of the manipulation they were facing. This revelation proves how incredibly fragile a forensic timeline truly is, and how a single, unverified variable can send a multi-agency task force chasing shadows for weeks. If you are still following the complex logic of this fractured timeline, and you appreciate the deep dive into forensic auditing, hit the like button right now to support the meticulous research behind this case. The investigation was no longer just about finding a missing person. It was about defeating an opponent who understood the vulnerabilities of the investigative process better than the investigators themselves. When the local authorities realized the actual window of abduction occurred during the darkest portion of the night, they were forced to confront a terrifying investigative vacuum. The suburban neighborhood where the residence was located possessed absolutely zero municipal surveillance infrastructure. During the hours before dawn, the streets were entirely deserted, and the typical civilian witnesses were fast asleep behind closed doors. The detectives canvassed over 50 adjacent properties, requesting any available private doorbell camera recordings or exterior motion sensor data. The results were completely devastating to the momentum of the task force. Every single resident who cooperated with the inquiry produced footage that showed absolutely nothing but empty sidewalks and undisturbed shadows. The perpetrator had operated within a geographic blind spot, moving with a level of precision that suggested profound familiarity with the immediate surroundings. The physical realm offered no clues regarding what transpired during those crucial early morning hours. This forced the technical analysts to abandon the physical search grid entirely and return to the abstract architecture of the cellular network. They needed to understand how a mobile device sitting completely dormant inside a house could suddenly broadcast a perfectly normal communication late in the afternoon. The investigators requested a secondary, highly specialized extraction of the network activity logs from the telecommunications provider. This was not a standard location query, but a deep dive into the microscopic data packets transmitted by the device operating system. The sheer volume of digital records required to isolate specific anomalies was staggering. The regional cyber task force commandeered an entire server farm just to process the background noise of the cellular grid. Every single byte of data generated by the target phone had to be meticulously separated from the surrounding network traffic. The investigators were essentially searching for a microscopic digital fingerprint hidden within an ocean of electronic static. Their frustration mounted as day after day yielded only dead ends and corrupted files. The pressure from the local community added immense weight to the technical analysis. Reporters were constantly demanding answers regarding the conflicting reports of her whereabouts, and the task force had absolutely nothing to offer them. The silence from the department bred wild speculation, but the detectives remained completely focused on the raw data. They understood that engaging with rumors would only further contaminate the operational integrity of the case. The technicians spent days parsing through thousands of lines of raw hexadecimal code, looking for any structural irregularities in the transmission protocols. They finally noticed a subtle pattern that defied standard user behavior. The data usage logs indicated a microscopic burst of background activity at exactly 4 in the morning. This anomalous spike occurred hours before anyone realized a crime was in progress, and long before the physical manipulation of the vehicle began. The data packets were not tied to any standard operating system update or routine cloud synchronization. They were generated by a specific executable file buried deep within the application directory. The technician's cross referenced the encrypted signature against known databases of commercial tracking software and malicious surveillance tools. The search parameters were incredibly narrow, focusing specifically on applications capable of manipulating core system functions without triggering user notifications. The architecture of the mobile device was designed to prevent exactly this kind of silent override, making the breach even more alarming. Whoever engineered this digital infiltration possessed advanced developmental privileges, bypassing the standard security protocols with chilling efficiency. The detectives theorized that the device must have been physically accessed and unlocked to install the hidden architecture. This implied the suspect had intimate proximity to the victim prior to the actual abduction. The phone was not just a passive witness to the crime, it was an active participant in the cover-up. The technical squad worked tirelessly through the weekend, running complex decryption algorithms to crack the shell of the hidden executable. The processing power required pushed their hardware to the absolute limit. The entire case now hinged on understanding what that specific burst of data was programmed to accomplish. The physical silence of the empty house was suddenly matched by the calculated silence of the corrupted digital environment. The detectives realized the perpetrator was not just a physically capable individual, but someone possessing a deeply sophisticated understanding of mobile architecture. The narrative of a simple suburban disappearance was rapidly morphing into a complex study of technological manipulation. The investigative team knew that whatever launched at 4 in the morning was the key to unlocking the afternoon contradictions. They stared at the strings of code, knowing the answer to the fate of the missing woman was trapped inside the artificial logic of a machine. As the forensic extraction pushed deeper into the corrupted directories, the true nature of the trap began to reveal itself. The code was waiting patiently to execute a final command. The analysts were on the verge of discovering the exact mechanism used to manipulate time. The anticipation within the silent briefing room was suffocating, as the lead technician prepared to decode the final encrypted payload. They were about to learn how a phantom speaks. At precisely midnight, the official digital forensics report was printed and distributed to the core team of investigators. The document detailed the complete dissection of the third-party application discovered on the mobile device. The software was not a virus or a remote access Trojan, but a commercially available scheduling tool designed for social media management and automated marketing campaigns. However, in the hands of the suspect, this benign organizational utility had been repurposed into an instrument of profound psychological terror. Forensic extraction proved that the application was manually installed and configured during the critical dark window at exactly 4 in the morning. The configuration logs revealed a single isolated task programmed into the software queue. The user had drafted a text message, selected a recipient from the contact list, and then instructed the application to delay the transmission for 12 consecutive hours. The target delivery time was hard-coded into the system memory as exactly 4 in the afternoon. When the digital clock struck that specific minute, software silently woke from its dormant state, bypassed the standard user interface, and pushed the pre-written message out onto the cellular network. The phone itself never moved from the house, but the network registered the transmission as a live event. This revelation struck the detectives with the force of a physical blow because the implications were absolutely devastating. The communication that had anchored the entire afternoon timeline, the message that assured everyone she was safe and going about her normal routine, was a complete fabrication. It was a digital ghost, a scheduled echo from a woman who was already gone. The suspect had literally programmed an alibi into the future. They sat in the dark at 4 in the morning, drafting a casual, mundane message, knowing full well that by the time it was actually delivered, they would be 50 miles away driving a stolen vehicle through an automated toll plaza. The clinical precision of this maneuver completely eliminated any remaining theories of a spontaneous crime of passion. This was a premeditated operation executed by someone who viewed the digital landscape as a tactical sandbox. The realization that the victim was already incapacitated, or worse, before the sun even rose, completely altered the emotional weight of the investigation. The family had spent the entire afternoon believing she was safe, based entirely on a lie transmitted by a machine. The scheduled text message was not a sign of life. It was a sophisticated digital decoy designed to manipulate the perception of reality and by the perpetrator. 12 hours of unimpeded freedom. The detectives stared at the printed report, feeling a profound sense of horror at the sheer ingenuity of the deception. The killer had essentially automated their own innocence. The entire justice system is built on the premise that a timeline is a sequence of human actions, but this case proved that actions can be separated from the human being entirely. Have you ever considered that an automated message could become the ultimate tool to conceal a violent crime? The concept forces us to question every single piece of digital correspondence we receive. The technical analysts trace the origin of the software installation, identifying the specific internet protocol address used to download the application. The forensic trail led directly away from the victim and pointed firmly toward a new, deeply disturbing conclusion. The person who typed that message was standing in her bedroom while she was completely defenseless. The text was not just an alibi, it was a silent confession written in code. The investigators now possessed irrefutable proof of a staged event. The afternoon timeline was dead and buried, replaced by the terrifying certainty of the pre-dawn assault. The entire task force shifted their focus, recognizing that the person they were hunting was not a panicked amateur, but a calculating predator who understood exactly how to weaponize the convenience of modern technology. They now understood that the silence of the victim had been engineered with ruthless efficiency. The application was designed to erase its own operational logs after the transmission was completed, leaving almost no trace behind. It was only the sheer persistence of the cyber unit digging through the residual memory fragments that brought this sophisticated manipulation into the light. The ghost in the machine had finally been identified, and the hunt for the flesh and blood architect could begin. The forensic report became the absolute cornerstone of the new strategy, providing the undeniable evidence needed to secure the next crucial legal maneuvers. The artificial reality constructed by the suspect had finally shattered, exposing the cold, dark truth hidden beneath the lines of code. Armed with the irrefutable proof of the timeline manipulation, the district attorney authorized an unprecedented legal maneuver. Based entirely on the newly established pre-dawn window and the microscopic digital breadcrumbs left behind by the scheduling application, the authorities officially named a primary person of interest in the court documents. The investigators presented a comprehensive affidavit outlining a compelling, circumstantial narrative. The documented evidence meticulously detailed how the individual possessed both the technical capability to install the delayed messaging software and the physical access required. to compromise the residents during the early morning hours. The prosecutors argued that the intricate staging of the afternoon alibi demonstrated a profound consciousness of guilt. In a highly unusual move, the presiding judge reviewed the digital forensics report and agreed with the assessment of the prosecution. An official warrant for arrest was issued despite the glaring absence of a physical body or a traditional primary crime scene. The legal framework of the entire prosecution rested firmly on the concept that the digital deception itself was the ultimate proof of malicious intent. The task force moved swiftly to execute the warrant, bringing the suspect into custody and effectively neutralizing the immediate threat to the community. The local media heavily publicized the arrest, framing it as a monumental victory for modern cyber forensics. The community breathed a collective sigh of relief, believing that the labyrinth of lies had finally been navigated and justice was imminent. However, within the sterile walls of the police precinct, the lead detectives remained deeply unsettled. They had successfully identified the architect of the digital ghost, but the physical reality of the case remained a terrifying void. The resolution of the timeline paradox only amplified the darkest unsolved mystery of the entire investigation. The authorities, Ben Mader Manafortes, knew exactly how the suspect had separated the phone from the vehicle, and they knew exactly why the text message was delayed. But this complete understanding of the methodology forced them to confront a profoundly disturbing geographical fact. The toll booth camera recorded the silver sedan traveling away from the city at 2 in the afternoon, a full 10 hours after the victim was presumed to be incapacitated. The suspect had driven the vehicle past that camera, intentionally creating a highly visible physical decoy to match the invisible digital decoy. The agonizing question that continues to haunt the investigative team is what exactly was inside that vehicle when it crossed the county line. If the victim was already gone before the sun came up and the phone was left behind in the closet to broadcast a false location, then the driver of that sedan was executing the final phase of a meticulously planned disposal operation. The trunk of that car represents a terrifying unknown variable in an otherwise perfectly solved mathematical equation. The authorities have the suspect in custody, and they have the digital confession locked in an evidence locker, but the vast stretches of highway beyond that toll booth hold a secret that no amount of code can reveal. The silence of the accused is absolute, leaving the detectives staring at the grainy black and white photograph of the sedan, wondering what horrors were hidden just out of frame. The subsequent search efforts have been completely paralyzed by the sheer volume of geographical possibilities. The sedan was captured heading southbound toward a heavily forested region spanning 3 different state jurisdictions. Without the cellular data to track the physical movements of the vehicle, the search grid expands into thousands of square miles of untamed wilderness. The tactical units deployed tracking dogs and aerial surveillance, but the natural environment swallowed the physical trail entirely. The suspect had perfectly calculated the intersection of technology and geography, using the digital network to mask their actions within the physical world. The prosecution is now preparing for a grueling trial facing the monumental task of convincing a jury to convict based on a phantom timeline and an empty car. The defense will inevitably attack the circumstantial nature of the evidence, arguing that lines of code cannot prove a homicide without a body. The arrest brought a legal conclusion to the manipulation, but it offered absolutely no closure regarding the final resting place. The system functioned perfectly to catch the manipulator, but it remains entirely blind to the physical consequences of the crime. What this case teaches us about the illusion of our digital footprint is absolutely critical for understanding modern criminal investigations. We live under the constant assumption that the electronic devices we carry are infallible witnesses to our daily movements. This investigation thoroughly destroys that assumption by exposing the terrifying reality of the digital alibi. A digital alibi occurs when a perpetrator intentionally manipulates location data, cellular transmissions, or automated scheduling software to create a verified electronic record that directly contradicts physical reality. The forensic evidence presented here proves that a network ping or a transmitted message does not guarantee the presence of a human being. It only guarantees the presence of a machine performing an instruction. The judicial system was built centuries ago on the machine foundation of physical evidence, relying on blood spatter, fingerprints, and eyewitness testimony to reconstruct a sequence of events. However, when a criminal knows how to hack the very concept of time by scheduling ghost communications, the legal framework is forced into a various asymmetric war against code. We leave an invisible trail of data everywhere we go, trusting it to secure our safety and document our existence. But this vulnerability allows that same data to be weaponized against us, turning our own devices into accomplices that lie to the authorities on behalf of our attackers. The ultimate lesson is that technology has completely detached the timeline from the physical body. A person can be violently erased from the physical world while their digital avatar continues to speak, reassuring their family and blinding the police. We must fundamentally change how we interpret electronic evidence, treating every digital timestamp not as an absolute truth, but as a potential manipulation, waiting to be forensically dismantled by those investigators who know exactly where to look. The formal court proceedings have effectively closed the judicial chapter on the timeline manipulation, but the darkest mystery still remains buried beneath those lines of code. The perpetrator sits behind bars, convicted by a jury that believed the digital convicted Jiso. Forensics, yet the physical location of the victim remains entirely unknown to this day. The profound contradiction that initiated this entire investigation has been legally resolved, but the emotional void left behind is permanent. The terrifying reality is that a human life was erased while a machine was programmed to simulate survival. If an entire timeline can be swapped out and weaponized so seamlessly using commercially available software, then what element of our physical reality is actually safe from manipulation? What detail in the next investigation we open will turn out to be a perfectly engineered digital illusion? Next week, I will open a heavily redacted file where the security camera itself becomes a willing accomplice to a horrific crime. To ensure you do not miss that complex breakdown, subscribe to the channel right now, hit the notification bell, and join the permanent digital archive of Tracking Evil with John, so we can continue dissecting these dark mysteries together.